Naresh Narasimhan, who is an architect, urbanist, a little bit of an activist here and there. How did that transformation start?
1995, the BDA released something called a Comprehensive Development Plan of Bangalore. It was a very interesting plan because it was neither comprehensive nor it had anything to do with development.
In India, we lost like 50 years of no urban design.
You have to be an optimist in these things. You can't keep saying it's impossible to do it in India. Ambience of an Indian interior is 11 on 10. But the moment you step out of that building onto that road, there is an open ditch with running sewage in it. And urban design doesn't mean just making films about the city, or it's about how do you make a footpath, how do you make a drain. This is all hard engineering, but it's also hard design. And a city's identity, you must remember, is actually about the quality of its infrastructure, how clean it was, how well made it was. Somebody asked me one day, how do you go on doing stuff and hardly anything happens? And I said, I'm an irresistible force pushing against an immovable object.
It's a pleasure to have with us today Naresh Narasimhan, who is an architect, urbanist, a little bit of an activist here and there, but more importantly, a very creative entrepreneur.
Thank you.
Naresh, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. So just starting off, into your own kind of personal transformation or evolution from being a award-winning, renowned architect to this urban, your love for urbanism and urban design and everything about the city. Did that just happen over a long period of time? Was there some defining moment that took you from just doing, great corporate buildings to doing something for the city? So how did that transformation start?
See, I had been working for it goes back longer than it goes back almost, I think, 25 or 26 years. I was working as any other architect would do, building houses and buildings and so on. And one day, I think in 1995, the BDA released something called a Comprehensive Development Plan of Bangalore. And it was a very interesting plan because it was neither comprehensive nor it had anything to do with development. And when I started looking at it and started understanding, and it had a map of Bangalore which I had never seen before, what Bangalore looked like in its entirety. Then when I started looking around, then I found that there was no map of Bangalore. The last good map of Bangalore was made in 1978. So that's when it started, the story. What happened was, then I started getting interested. Anyway, I was interested in cartography as a field. And then simultaneously with Indian space capabilities increasing, we started taking the help of ISRO and various people to see how to make what does Bangalore really look like, and can we use that information to make it like a better place to live. So that's where it started. So from there, I've been involved in a multiplicity of, I was the one who created one of the first accurate maps of Bangalore in the late 90s. With the then help, a lot of people helped me, Mr. Narayan Murthy of Infosys, Mr. Pai of National Aeronautical Laboratories, Mr. Dr. U.R.E. from the Indian Space Research Organization. It came together as the first accurate one. And then in the year 2000, I was part of the founding team along with Nandan Nilekani and Ravichandar and various others of something called the Bangalore Agenda Task Force.
BATF.
Which was probably the first, people have different opinions about it, but the good thing about it was that it was the first time that there was a true public-private partnership when it came to planning and visioning for a city of the future. There was till then it was mostly controlled by political and bureaucratic systems. It's the first time that the people of the city, some might argue the elite, but citizens nonetheless, right, were brought into a formal planning process where every agency which has something to do with the city, both elected and parastatal agencies, would do a review meeting every 15 days and look at and be driven by information as to what the city really needs, rather than a couple of people deciding what the city needs.
And was that anchored by some full-time organization, or how did it?
Yeah, the BATF was a full-time organization we had, I think, about 8 staff at our peak.
Yeah, and
But most of the time came in from industry leaders and people like me and a few others who took different aspects of the city. For instance, I was responsible for just introducing the concept of what is known as GIS, Geographical Information Systems. Cartography has moved from flat maps to three-dimensional understanding of the city using technology. That is the other thing about Bangalore that I always liked, because Bangalore has always been at the forefront of innovation and of creativity and of new ideas and of, a lot of ideas that run India today come from Bangalore. So I felt that why is that same set of, if I were to cut it short and tell you, a city is both its hardware and its software, to use a computer analogy, right?
Right.
The hardware is its roads, its systems, its buildings, its water supply, its electricity, and the software is its people, right? And the people are much more advanced than the quality of the hardware. You know what happens if you run a advanced level program on a low grade machine?
Yeah.
And
Everybody
all the
gets
problems,
inefficient. Yeah.
It just jams, it bugs. So this started interesting for me to say, how do you leverage technology and how do you leverage best practices that the world has seen? Not blindly copy Singapore or Japan or New York or whatever it is. How do you leverage that knowledge and use the data and the inbuilt wisdom of Bangaloreans to improve it? That was the motivation.
Naresh, do you want to sort of recollect some of the important projects that you have been deeply involved in and they have shaped what Bangalore is today in some small or significant ways?
Okay. So,
I think BATF was one.
no, that's not really a project. That was more an association of it. But individually, if you look at it, I have been trying to do my little bit. Out of every 20 ideas I come up with, and I write the design brief myself. Because I see a problem and I don't wait to be asked what to do about it. I say this is the way to fix it and make a design and try to show it to politicians, bureaucrats, decision makers, industry people, try to get the finance. Getting a public project together is not as simple as the private sector. You need a lot of buy-in from a lot of stakeholders. You need to build consensus, and you also need to you have to be able to convey the passion for the idea that you have into the minds of the decision makers. Once that happens, 1 out of 20 gets through. But I am not depressed by that. Somebody asked me one day, how do you go on doing stuff and hardly anything happens? And I said, I am an irresistible force pushing against an immovable object. But sometimes the immovable object looks away and you can get behind it and get something good happens. It's good in a way. You have to be an optimist in these things. You can't keep saying it's impossible to do it in India. Urban design, as distinct from urban planning and from architecture, the word urban has to be embedded into the heads of the people who run the city. And urban design doesn't mean just making films about the city, or it's about how do you make a footpath, how do you make a drain, how do you make sure when it rains a lot, flooding doesn't happen. This is all hard engineering, but it's also hard design. Unless there's a design element to it, it won't look good. And a city's identity, you must remember, is actually about the quality of its infrastructure. You remember cities, how clean it was, how well made it was, how historical things have been preserved so beautifully. That's your memory of when you go to other places. How do you make that is fundamentally good quality infrastructure? If you do aesthetic good quality infrastructure, the city's identity will get strengthened. And people will feel a sense of pride. A quick example, like you asked me, a few years back, the government asked me to work with them on redoing Church Street as a pedestrian-oriented street. Church Street is a street parallel to MG Road, which is the old center of Bangalore. Some might argue that the new center is Whitefield now, but for us old Bangaloreans, MG Road was it. So this was a beautiful road next to it, which was not a arterial road. It was not even it was a secondary road. And we worked with the government, the BBMP, the Bangalore Mahanagar Palike, that's the Bangalore City Corporation, and all the other parastatals, the electricity people, BESCOM, BWSSB, everybody. and with the political system making sure that committed to the success of the project. I think, I mean, I don't know whether, according to me, Church Street is one of the best streets built in India, and it's built to last. It never has to be dug again for the next 30, 40 years. It is based on a system developed by another company called TenderS.U.R.E. Now almost about 60 kilometers of roads in the center of Bangalore have walkable footpaths, ducted infrastructure, and perfectly laid roads without a single pothole in them. It's possible to do it in India, but it requires huge amounts of both physical, spiritual, and sometimes extra corporeal energy also. If you have to get the energy to do it, because the system is not geared to change that rapidly. And the system, just like any other system in the world, even in our private lives, resisting change is inherently built into the human system. So to be able to make that change is part of the, what do you call it?
So really in India, we lost like 50 years of no urban design, right? So you had like a few pockets of the old, Pondicherry, or few where you could visibly see what good design means, like you said, for the quality of life, whether it's for walking, for social life, for everything. But and then we had a whole few decades of
neglect.
I mean, I guess just blind expansion.
Correct.
So is that awareness now? I mean, I know there's some awareness in Bangalore. There's some new streets in Bangalore, which you're now working on, maybe to be more pedestrian friendly and so on. Right, but one big challenge has been things like bicycle paths and some of these. Those are very tough to fix, right? I mean, those are there are just too many constraints. So, do you think Indian cities would ever get there?
No, it's a larger policy issue. A bicycle path can come on every road in Bangalore only when the number of vehicles in Bangalore go down to 30-40 lakhs. Right now, it's over 1 crore. It is the worst ratio of vehicle to people population in the world. In spite of a lot of us, doing this for the past 20-25 years, a lot of people in Bangalore are interested in the valley. It's probably, somebody said, it's the highest density of activists per square kilometer of any city in the world. In spite of that, this we cannot able to stop this relentless automobilization of the city. Unless the automobilization of the city goes down, and the requirement for lane widths comes down, putting bicycle tracks all over the city is a pipe dream. It's not that it's not happened in other cities. Amsterdam used to be like this in the 70s, terribly choked. Now there are no vehicles. It's also people change their mindset. They start. Bangalore is the best city in India for bicycling because the weather is great throughout the year. But the sheer number of gasoline-powered vehicles on the road is not conducive for a cycling infrastructure.
So the metro coming into some good density.
At its peak, execution of metro phase 3, the modal split of metro will not exceed 15%. It's very, very expensive to do it per square kilometer. The only advantage is the speed at which it can travel, but the total contribution to the total traffic modal split of any city is only about 15%. So the real load has to be taken by a super efficient bus system, which should take about 50%. And then the rest of it should be private vehicles. If you do that, just to give you a cross example, Bombay has a population of 2.5 crore, 25 million people. It has 44 lakh vehicles. 40 lakh vehicles. It has 40 lakh vehicles in total. Okay? Bangalore has a population of 1.3 crores, half of Bombay, 13 million. And it has a vehicle population of 1 crore. So there's something clearly wrong, right? Because we do not have a suburban train system in the city like Bombay does. People are buying their own, there's no choice. So it's a catch-22. The government has to come in with much stronger investments in public infrastructure and mobility infrastructure. Only then will alternative forms of transport like bicycling and maybe even walking around the place on good footpaths. That will only become the norm when that policy change happens. Singapore did it very efficiently by putting something called an entitlement tax. If you want to buy a car, the tax was double that of the car's value. So it automatically, and it took all that money and pushed that money directly into public infrastructure. So people are very happy. Like some famous economist or mayor said, I think that he said a developed country or a developed city is one in which the rich take public transit. So if that policy is there, like London, the richest person in the whole of London will still drive on, will take public transit. It is not it's done so well.
In fact, one of the reasons why we are seeing this, Naresh, is because Bangalore has developed dramatically over the last 2 decades.
Correct.
And if you look at its urban landscape, what are some of the things that you think the city has got right? And some of the things that city has not got right, if you reflect back?
Okay. I think for the most part, we have managed to, through a combination of citizen vigilante efforts and a combination of also public opinion, we've managed to retain the central green spaces and the older architecture of the city in the middle of the city. We have managed to hold on to that. We have not seen much. There has been some erosion on the edges, but a large part of it is the 2 big parks, the Kaban Park and Lal Bagh, has retained its preeminence in the landscape. We've not been that successful with the lake systems. When I was a kid, there was one lake all over the place. So, but that has gone down dramatically. But now there is a rising awareness that these are part of our ecosystem, and wherever possible, further degradation has stopped. It's actually starting to show an upward trend in these things coming back. Bangalore doesn't have any great hills, it has ups and downs, but no real elevated high points and so on. Overall, I think there are also social benefits to Bangalore that other cities don't have. One is, there is no real organized crime kind of subculture operating in the city. I mean, there is crime, but it's mostly crimes of passion or petty crime. It's not really any of that. So it's quite a safe city for migrants and people who are new to the city and all that. It's a fairly safe city. So there are other aspects to it which have. This used to be like that when I was much younger also. That hasn't changed in spite of its migrant population. What else? I think what has also not changed is the laid-back attitude of its people. Right? You go to Chennai early morning, 5 o'clock, the city seems to be already had its second coffee and starting to go to work or something. Bangalore at 7:30, there'll be nobody around. Still. So it's still got that one. It's not got what I call a rat racy kind of feeling that other cities give you. It's still a livable place, a lot of greenery, easy to get along. The Kannadiga population is particularly tolerant. It's the only city in India you can speak 5 languages to an auto driver and he will understand you instantly. We are not crazy about language chauvinism or identity. It's very tolerant society. So it's a good place to, and of course it has the best climate in the world. So it's usually between 23 and 27 degrees for 80% of the year. So it has its pluses. I think the biggest minus right now in Bangalore is the mistake we made in planning the mobility options for the city. But again, it's a correctable problem. Things are happening to correct it. I'm not saying, at least we know that now this is the problem. And if you go back to a slightly more Indian way of thinking or an Indic way of thinking how to solve this problem, it probably can be solved.
And things like waste, right? They've taken up some
everything.
steps.
So in almost all aspects now, I would say that Bangalore has recognized the pains and problems of a growing city in a combination of both government and private individuals who have come together and are interested in the sustenance of this sustainability and resilience of Bangalore. So I think we have a good, we keep going this way, I think we are only going to go upwards.
Yeah, if we can sustain this awareness and the action orientation to fix things, maybe in the next 5 years you will see some
No, I
decision.
must also congratulate the political parties of Karnataka, because I do not know whether we are able to do this in other cities which have much more, probably more autocratic forms of, leadership. But the Karnataka government, I'm not saying whoever has been there, has always heard you out. Even if even if you don't agree with their final decision, you're at least given an audience to present your contrarian point of view. And maybe the decision they have taken, they will at least modify to reflect some of these concerns, if not wholeheartedly. And that, I think, is a unique to Karnataka's political system.
In fact, taking the example of Church Street, Naresh, working on a project like this with multiple stakeholders, they are always very challenging in any part of the country, actually.
Yes.
What is the learning curve that you've had to execute a project like that, and something that could be scalable in other parts of the country as well? Some learning curve from there.
See, first, to start with, I have to give credit to this group who put together a document called TenderS.U.R.E. That was the beginning of it. Because every time what we were noticing was that the litany that you tar a road today and tomorrow the water guy comes and digs it up. Everybody just complained about a problem, but I think TenderS.U.R.E. recognized that issue and started figuring out how to make public infrastructure sustainable in the long term using it was called SURE for a reason, some standards for road execution or something like that. It had some anagram like that. Okay. And they made a manual out of it, which was available to anybody. Actually, anybody can get a copy of that manual. So what happened was that it recognized that many of these issues were happening because of systemic failures and mistakes and accumulated errors in the tendering system.
So really at scale urban design probably.
Yeah, it's an urban design manual kind of thing almost. So it started with something like that. But beyond that, to be able to there is no formal mechanism in India to make all these government agencies and parastatal agencies come together.
No, and the stakeholders on the road.
There's no concept of community inclusion in decision making. These are all changing. Now ward committees are there, traders association come together, etc., etc. But it took a huge learning curve. The only analogy that I could probably give you is it's a lot of stones with pointy edges. And my job was to put them all in a steel bowl, close the lid and shake very hard. So they banged against each other, and after some time they were sliding past each other like river pebbles, which is when the project got done. Everybody started understanding that, and also what I was trying to do was infuse a sense of pride in the system, that we are used to castigating government for bad quality. So if you actually show them how to do good quality, everybody has got some kind of self-worth issue also. No? Everybody was very proud that they did something like that, which is completely unique and it'll go on their, performance record also as a successful implementation of an idea, and which has changed the way people look at urban design. It has a larger impact than that 800 meters or 900 meters that is there. It is a much larger impact on the city. People saw that it's possible to do Western quality infrastructure with an Indian sensibility. It's possible to do it.
Sure.
Naresh, you put also some structural elements to how to support the participation with the government, and MOD Institute is one such institute, right? So where you've gotten young urban designers who are passionate about it to work alongside you and work with the. Do you think that now you can scale this, and this is something that other cities can emulate? And do other cities have things like the MOD Institute?
Yeah, there are. I'm not the unique one. There is a group of people in Chennai who are trying to do it. There's a group of people in Bombay, a group of people in Hyderabad. Every city has some version of this. But I think what is unique about us is that most of them follow a research model and a recommendation model. So The difference I thought was I'm used to building buildings and delivering buildings to people. I'm not used to making drawings and looking at them. A lot of people do drawings or research. I'll do the research, I'll do the drawings, but my goal is how to do construction design and how to execute in a complicated environment like India. So that it's more like most of them are what I would call think tanks. It's important, the debate, the environment, how to do, what to do. But how does it translate to an outcome? So my job was to do the research, do the design, and how to execute the outcome. How do you make it actually happen on the ground? So it's more like an act tank, not a think tank. It's like a pattern tank or tiger tank.
Yeah, no, bias for action.
It's a bias for action, and part of that bias is also understanding that, I don't know, maybe it's a pun on the word, but cities are changing, right? It's changing cities. People study changing cities, but you can also you can use it as a verb. You can change the city by yourself also if you want to. It's not easy, it's very, very hard, and it's pro bono, you don't get paid for it, but it gives you a greater satisfaction to know that you have had an impact beyond where you just live and where you just work and all that. If you are able to make the lives impact a lot of people, a lot of philanthropy is based on how much impact it has. From my perspective also, it's like all the people, 50,000 people go through Church Street every day. So if you add that up, it's 15 lakhs a year, right? So it has an impact on that many people. So it gives you some strange kind of, I don't know, fulfillment, self-worth, whatever you call it.
Naresh, you were talking about change the city. So do you want to talk about some of the projects that you are involved in right now going forward? And if you have a wish list that you would see some of the change in the city.
Yeah, so I always have about half a dozen ideas. I don't know which one, each one moves at its own pace. So some of them rocket along, some of them take forever. But there are many projects that we are involved in right now. One of the more successful ones, which is half under completion, is another piece of forgotten grey infrastructure in every Indian city called the stormwater drain, or the Nala, as you call it in North India, I think. Here we call it Raja Kaluve, which means King Canal in Tamil, in Kannada. Similar word in Tamil also. So these are actually originally built to carry excess stormwater, but over the years they have become carriers of illegal sewage. So when it rains, there's no place for the stormwater, and the whole area, because it's already full of sewage, and the whole place floods and creates a huge mess. And the sewage mixes with the fresh rainwater and pollutes large areas, and it's a blight on the cityscape. Property values next to a stormwater drain are half that of the next parallel road because of the incredible stink and nuisance of these stormwater drains, which are used for everything else except stormwater. They carry sewage, carcasses of dead animals. I've even found entire mattresses and sofa sets. People think it's a garbage dump. So we took a project recently about 2 years ago, which was supported by the then Chief Minister, Mr. Yediyurappa at that time, who said that let's take a pilot. Bangalore has 800 kilometers of these. So my grand idea was to come up with a project that Bangalore is the largest city in the world, not next to a natural feature. We have to qualify in something we are not also. Only what, you can't keep saying greatest for everything else, right? We are not next to any river, not next to any sea, not next to any mountain, not next to any nothing. We are actually a high point and the Bangalore slopes away from it, from the center. There's no reason it should flood at all. It's all downhill from one ridge. But over time, messes have happened, lakes have been eaten up. So water doesn't find its... So we took this project as a pilot to show that how do you convert a grey, dirty resource in literally how to make a backyard, a terrible, foul-smelling backyard of the city. How do you convert that to its front yard? How do you make it a public place? How do you make something that people will be proud of? And how do you make a new open space? See, today, people's entertainment in India is, reduced to going to malls, where you're being forced to buy something. So my idea was, how can you create public places where there is no pressure on you to buy anything? There'll be Mumfali if you want. That's about it. Right? But you just enjoy nature, you enjoy something, and you also create a walking infrastructure. You are asking about cycling infrastructure. I'm saying that traffic free, no vehicular traffic at all. How do you create walking and cycling infrastructure in the city? So this project tried to tick all these boxes at once, and curiously it was successful. It had 10 reasons why it could fail. Okay, actually the funniest thing is that 9 of those reasons have vanished. Only one remains, that of sewage entering the drain. But that also is being stopped. Once it's done, you're going to create almost like a 10 to 12 kilometer long pathway cutting across the entire city through its poorest and worst maintained areas, right? Through its very affluent areas into a large lake. The success of the project till now is that we have stopped the sewage 90%, 80 to 90%. No more sewage is entering the lake. Birds have started coming back to the lake. That's a good sign, which means that the lake is coming back to life, right? And also what is happening is all along its path there is a series of public parks, new infrastructure for the city. Very complicated project, involving almost every parastatal, like I mentioned in Church Street, but owned by the BBMP, that is the city corporation. Massive support from senior people, senior officers, IAS officers at the level of ACS and even the CS, the Chief Secretary, etc. And the political will to make this happen. And the pilot is now about 50% complete already. And you can already see one dramatic, what a change it will make. This is one project. We also have some other projects going on which are still under planning. We're trying to create something like a spatial observatory and like a innovation hub for Bangalore
city. With a lot of aggregated urban data.
Yeah, where we can bring in a lot of aggregated urban data, and Prashant are working together on how to merge the technology vision of Bangalore, literally the hardware with its software. How do you showcase it in such a way that it becomes an object of... No city in India has a city gallery of that quality, a full-scale model of Bangalore, a 3D visualization, a place where all data of the city is now made into a clearinghouse model where it's available for everybody to understand and to contribute to the development, and etc., etc. And we're also trying to extend that experience by another location, which is about 100 acres of land in which we want to recreate a new forest. There is a forest already. We want to enhance it and also use the rest of the remaining engineering. There are some industrial sheds and all that into the heritage of Karnataka, into the heritage of the state, as well as its people, and create a big people place. Basically creating public spaces which have a purpose. Which have a specific purpose and which will encourage one and closer sense of identity with Bangalore, contribution to the environment as well as the new institutions, traditions that were made by somebody at some point. I think one of the roles we see ourselves in a self-appointed custodian model of the city is to create new traditions, which will then become part of the city's lore and culture and contribute to its positioning in the world as one of the best cities to live in.
Naresh, some personal stuff, one of the good kept secrets, your passion for being an actor.
That one.
How seriously do you take that?
Well, it's more a hobby than, it's not a profession, it's more a hobby and an avocation. I find myself even in my role as an architect and as a urban designer and this thing, that one has to act a bit to get those. But you have to be able to convey, I wouldn't say act, I should be able to communicate what you want clearly and set expectations correctly, right? So some few years back I was offered a role in a film, and it sounded like something that interesting to do. And it's actually bizarre because all your life, otherwise, you're playing the same person every day for the rest of your life. So the films give you to be an opportunity to be somebody else for 2-3 days at a time. I mean, you can be somebody else all the time if you want to act, but 2-3 days a month, if you get a chance to be somebody else and see the world in another perspective, and there is a method called method acting, right? So you become that character, and then it somewhat teaches you a little bit about yourself, and when you see yourself as somebody else, and maybe correct a few things which are not quite okay with your real self. So it's useful, and I must say that I've not done many films, about half a dozen of them, but short roles.
That's
Yeah, it's not bad.
no, not bad. But Naresh, other than this acting, next 10 years, right? Is it more of pursuing what urban? Solving urban challenges.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty much the next. That's how you see it.
I have a what is that word we used to use in our olden days? A BHAG goal, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
So I want. Bangalore is just my laboratory to experiment with. But really speaking, in India, as an architect, we have reached a level of 9 on 10 compared to any advanced, developed society in the quality of the building I can produce. I won't say 10 on 10 yet, 9 on 10. And today you ask me to build a Burj Dubai, I can do it. We have the confidence. The interiors in India, quality of interior design has hit 11 on 10. It's better than what I see in the rest of the world. It's an insane comparison. The quality of the quality of finishes, capability and ambience of an Indian interior, modern Indian interior, is better than what I have seen anywhere else on the planet. It's 11 on 10 on a scale of 10. I would rate India. But the moment you step out of that building onto that road, there is an open ditch with running sewage in it. And your entire contrast between the two worlds is for me too much to take. So my grand goal is, how do you make the Indian outdoors as good as it indoors? It's not enough to hit 10 on 10. We have to go to a 12. We have to leapfrog what the West made the mistakes. Don't go down that automobilization path, which they did. They are now removing automobiles, and you can't even go to Fifth Avenue in New York in a car anymore. And here we are encouraging more and more cars. Electric cars is not going to solve the problem. It's still a car. So you have to move to this concept of shared mobility and also make Indian cities look beautiful, not just work. Aesthetic quality of your external environment must be as good as the interior quality. So that sounds like a little difficult to achieve, but we shall overcome. Hum honge kamyab.
No, Naresh, all the power and good luck on that. Like you said, it is a audacious but a worthwhile pursuit for the next decade. Thank you.
Thanks, Naresh.
Thank you very much.